Something is sitting on the floor of the Baltic Sea. It has been there for a very long time. Nobody put it there recently. Nobody built it last century. And the deeper you go into this story, the harder it becomes to explain what it actually is. This is not a rumor. This is not a legend. Divers went down. They saw it with their own eyes. They touched it. And when they came back up, the questions only got louder. Today, on Benthic Files, we are going all the way to the bottom of this mystery. And by the end of this video, you are going to understand why this story never truly went away. Let's go back to the summer of 2011. A Swedish team of deep-sea treasure hunters called Ocean X is dragging sonar equipment across the floor of the Gulf of Bothnia, the northernmost stretch of the Baltic Sea. They are looking for old shipwrecks, maybe some lost cargo, maybe something worth selling. What they were not expecting was this. Their sonar screen lit up with a shape so strange, so perfectly formed, so completely out of place on that seafloor, that the men on the boat went silent. The image showed a circular structure, nearly 60 meters wide, sitting on the seafloor at a depth of around 90 meters. It had raised edges, a flat top, and trailing behind it, stretching back more than 300 meters, was what looked like a long, flat trail, almost like a runway, or a drag mark left by something enormous. Nobody had seen anything like it, and then someone on that boat said out loud what everyone was thinking. It looks like the Millennium Falcon from Star Wars. That comparison went viral, and almost overnight, the Baltic Sea Anomaly became one of the most talked about mysteries on the internet. Now, before we go any further, this channel exists for stories exactly like this one, the kind of stories the ocean hides from us. Subscribe right now, hit the like button, and drop a comment below telling us what you think this thing is. Natural formation, ancient ruin, something else entirely. We want to know. The debate is still very much alive. So back to 2011. Peter Lindberg, the team leader of Ocean X, knew they had found something unusual. But the water was cold, dark, and almost 90 meters deep. Going down was not simple. They spent months preparing for a second expedition. Lindberg reportedly swore his crew to secrecy. He turned off cell phones, GPS trackers, radios. He did not want word getting out before they knew what they were dealing with. And then something strange happened. Even before they went back down, when the team returned to the site and anchored above the anomaly, a black ship appeared on the horizon. It was a Swedish military vessel. It made no attempt to communicate. It simply sat there and watched them. Lindberg later said the area was in international waters, so the Swedish military had no reason to be there. But they were there, just watching, and then they left. When the divers finally went down, they found something that stopped them cold. The object was real, not a sonar glitch, not a scan error. It was physically there. It measured roughly 60 meters across and stood about 4 meters tall off the seafloor. The surface was covered in something dark. One diver described it as looking burnt. The edges were sharp, unusually sharp. There were what appeared to be ridges running across the top. Some areas had formations that looked like steps, not gently sloping rock, not rounded edges you would expect from a glacial deposit. These were angles, hard corners, geometric patterns. The divers brought up loose rock samples from around the base of the structure and handed them over to scientists. And then something else happened, something that pushed the story into even stranger territory. The electronics started failing. Not just one device, multiple devices. Cameras cut out and reset without warning. Communication equipment lost signal completely. The satellite phone stopped working. And here is the part that makes your brain slow down for a second. According to the team's accounts, when they moved the boat more than around 200 meters away from the object, everything switched back on. Every single device, working perfectly. Move back toward the anomaly, everything dies again. Move away, it all comes back. This pattern reportedly repeated itself more than once during their time at the site. Now, there were no synchronized technical logs released to the public to fully verify this. but multiple team members gave the same account across many different interviews over several years. And that consistency is hard to simply brush aside. Scientists were skeptical from the beginning. That is their job. Volker Bruchet, an associate professor of geology at Stockholm University, was given the rock samples that the divers brought up. His analysis was clear and direct. The samples were granites, gneisses, and sandstones. These are exactly the kinds of rocks you would expect to find in a region that was shaped by massive glaciers thousands of years ago. The Baltic Sea itself sits in what geologists call a glacial basin, a landscape carved out by enormous walls of moving ice during the last ice age, which ended roughly 11,000 years ago. As those glaciers moved, they picked up rocks, boulders, and debris. When they melted, they dropped everything they were carrying. Bruchet said the anomaly and the rocks around it were most likely formed through glacial and post-glacial processes. Finnish planetary geomorphologist Jarmo Kortonomi went further and said the 300-meter runway behind the structure was almost certainly a drumlin, a long mound shaped by glacial movement, and that there are similar formations scattered across that part of the seafloor. So from the scientific side, the explanation was natural. Glaciers did it. Moving ice, over thousands of years, formed something that happens to look astonishing on sonar. But here is where it gets complicated, because if you line up the facts carefully, some of them do not fit cleanly into the glacier story. The rock samples came from loose debris around the base of the structure. No core samples were ever taken from the structure itself. The actual composition of the main formation has never been scientifically analyzed in a controlled way. The sonar equipment used in 2011 was not high resolution by modern standards. Scientists pointed that out themselves, saying the resolution was not good enough to draw detailed conclusions from the image alone. The Ocean X team released selected images and fragmented footage over the years, but the complete dataset from their expeditions was never published. That gap in publicly available data means that geologists were being asked to form scientific opinions without having full access to what the team actually recorded. Some of them said so openly, and the full high-resolution survey of the anomaly that would settle many of these questions has never been conducted. Until very recently, in 2025, the Society for UAP Studies announced support for a new scientific mission to investigate the Baltic Sea Anomaly using updated technology. This expedition was designed to conduct multi-beam sonar mapping, sub-bottom profiling, environmental sampling, magnetic field measurements, and detailed photogrammetry. The goal was not to confirm alien spacecraft. The goal was to finally get the data that the 2011 and 2012 expeditions never fully delivered. Because for all the noise this story generated, it is remarkable how little hard scientific data actually exists. The anomaly has never been fully mapped. The main structure has never been sampled. The electromagnetic interference reports have never been formally tested. For something that captured the imagination of the entire internet more than a decade ago, the level of actual scientific investigation is shockingly thin. And then in 2024, something happened that reframed this entire conversation. Not at the anomaly site, somewhere else in the Baltic Sea entirely. Researchers from Kiel University in Germany were conducting a routine marine survey in the Bay of Mecklenburg, off the coast of Germany, when they discovered something that nobody expected. A wall, stretching for more than half a mile along the seafloor, made of more than 1,600 stones, some of them enormous, others carefully placed in between to connect the larger boulders. Scientists studied the site using diving teams and autonomous underwater vehicles. They created a three-dimensional model of the wall and analyzed how the landscape around it had changed over thousands of years. Their conclusion, published in a major scientific journal, was that this was not a natural formation. It was man-made. Built by a Stone Age community more than 10,000 years ago. A hunting structure designed to drive reindeer into a kill zone along the edge of what was once a lake. Sea levels rose after the Ice Age ended. The land flooded, and the wall sank beneath the Baltic. It was the oldest known man-made megastructure ever discovered in Europe. It had been sitting there on the seafloor for more than 10,000 years. And nobody knew about it until 2024. That discovery changed something, because it proved that the Baltic Sea contains real, verified, ancient human structures hiding in plain sight on its floor. It proved that the idea of something enormous and old and human-made sitting on the seafloor of the Baltic is not science fiction. It is science fact. And that realization brings the Baltic Sea Anomaly back into focus in a completely different way. The anomaly site sits in the Gulf of Bothnia. The stone wall was found hundreds of kilometers away in the Bay of Mecklenburg. They are different places, different discoveries, but they are both in the same body of water. And one of them just turned out to be a 10,000-year-old human construction that was dismissed as impossible for years. So here is where we stand. The most likely scientific explanation for the Baltic Sea Anomaly remains a glacial formation. Most geologists who have looked at the available data lean in that direction. The rock samples from around the site match what you would expect from a glacial basin. The runway behind it matches the profile of a drumlin. The circular shape, while unusual, is not scientifically impossible through natural processes. That is the honest, grounded conclusion that the weight of current evidence points toward, but the evidence is incomplete. The main structure has not been properly sampled. The electronics interference has not been formally tested. The full sonar dataset has never been published. And a certified archaeological find in the same sea just proved that the Baltic can and does hide ancient human constructions at depths that nobody thought to look. Drop a comment right now. Tell us what your gut says. Is this a natural formation that got famous for looking weird? Is it something ancient that humans built before the last ice age? Or is there a third explanation that nobody has seriously explored yet? The comment section is where this community thinks out loud. Let us hear your theory. The deeper story here is not really about alien spaceships or underwater UFOs. It is about the ocean itself. We have mapped less than 25% of the world's seafloor in any meaningful detail. The oceans cover more than 70% of the planet. They are deeper, older, and more complex than anything we have built or imagined. The Baltic Sea is relatively shallow compared to the world's great oceans. It is heavily studied compared to the Pacific Abyss, and yet it still managed to hide a 10,000-year-old wall for the entire span of recorded human history. It still has something sitting on its floor at 90 meters depth that the best minds have not agreed on after more than a decade. The ocean does not give up its secrets easily, and the secrets it holds are bigger than most people realize. Peter Lindbergh and Dennis Asberg, the two men who originally found the anomaly, have never backed away from their position that what they found is genuinely unusual. They have not claimed it is an alien spacecraft. They have said consistently that it is something they cannot easily explain, that what they saw down there in person was different from what the simplified public version of the story suggested. The stepped formations, the sharp angles, the dark burned-looking surface, the electronics cutting out. They experienced that. Whatever the final scientific explanation turns out to be, those men went to 90 meters in cold, dark, murky water and came back with questions that have lasted more than a decade. That counts for something. If this story opened your eyes to what the ocean is hiding from us, please share this video right now. Send it to someone who loves mysteries, someone who loves history, or someone who still thinks the ocean is boring. The seafloor is the last great frontier on this planet. Benthic Files exists to take you there, and we will leave you with the question that matters most. Archaeology just proved the Baltic hides structures built by humans before written history. The anomaly is still waiting for a proper scientific investigation. When that investigation finally happens, and the full sonar maps and samples come back analyzed, what do you think we are going to find? A glacier that happened to look exactly like a spacecraft, a structure built by people we have never heard of, or something that does not fit into any category we currently have. The floor of the Baltic Sea is waiting. And the answer, whatever it turns out to be, is going to be one of the most important things we have ever pulled up from the deep. Stay with Benthic Files, because we are going to be there when it happens.